Hello, my friends. It is November 22nd, 2025. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. What I'm going to show you today, I'm compiling bits of context that will help you see what's coming down the pike. Please stay all the way through the end because I've collected things. You're not going to see all of this anywhere else. I'm really trying to help you see certain things about what's happening with drone attacks and what's happening on the battlefield, and so that you understand what's about to happen and why. Okay, let's start here. It was a slower night. Doesn't mean things weren't happening, but it allowed me the opportunity to do this context thing today. Overnight, drone strikes hit multiple targets in occupied Crimea, Saratov, Syzran, Kursk region. Explosions were reported near a refinery in Syzran with casualties, and a power substation in Crimea, and Rilsk was hit, cutting power to 3,000. Russians claimed it downed 69 drones. Okay, so we know that there are about 70 drones that went out. We don't know exactly what was hit. We see video has emerged of a nighttime attack in Syzran. Syzran has been targeted several times in the past. You don't see any flashes here, but you can hear the explosions if you're like watching the video long enough. This is Succomimus, who does an excellent job with this. I want to show you what he's saying here because there's this nuance that's new to the oil refinery attacks that you want to hear about.
Hello everyone, so we're going to start the day with a report on a drone strike targeting Russia's Syzran oil refinery. Not the most exciting videos I have to admit, but I'm going through oil refinery withdrawal symptoms at the moment since there hasn't been one hit for a few days now. So anything will do to scratch the itch. I'm going to play two videos for you with the sound.
So you can hear the explosions.
So on one of them, you can hear a drone and then a very loud explosion which sounds like an impact. On the other, the blast you hear isn't the sound of a detonation on a target, but the sound of a SAM launching, which is actually something new which we haven't really seen from these oil refinery strikes. For a long time, they've been left pretty much undefended with only ground fire targeting the drones. So it seems Russia has finally moved some short range air defense systems to try and protect them. Now,
So the second sound that you heard was a SAM launcher, not the drones attacking. And that's the nuance here. Russia has moved these air defense systems around oil refineries. So that also leads to the question of where are they moving them from and what's now no longer protected that once was protected. It could be coming from the interior of Russia where it just wasn't being used. That's possible, but there's also a limited amount of these things. And so they had to be moved from somewhere. Maybe it's from somewhere else that is now unprotected. Okay, this is one of the co-founders of Firepoint. Firepoint is doing most of the damage here or much of the damage with the drone attacks at night. He's saying Firepoint is a company whose drones the armed forces are now using to destroy Russians, and they're doing it pretty effectively, it seems. 70% of what you see on TV is done by our deep strike drones, he says. Oil refineries, is it your doing? Yes. And the latest one in Novorossiysk is ours too, he says in the interview. The Alpha Special Group did an incredible job. The Special Operations Forces, the 14th UAS Regiment, and all users destroyed a lot of oil refineries. Now our FPT-2 drone has started to show itself. So yeah, these are responsible for many of the strikes on the oil refineries and thermal power plants, and this will only pick up more as production increases. Okay, what have the Russians been doing to the Ukrainians overnight? Russia launched one Iskander-M ballistic missile from occupied Crimea, 104 attack drones. Ukrainian air defenses managed to shoot down or jam 89 of them. It's not a bad percentage, 80-ish, high 80% something. Hits were recorded in 15 locations. But I want to show you this. This was that devastating strike in Ternopil the other day. This was 2-3 days ago. Both murdered by Russians 2 days ago in Ukrainian city of Ternopil. They're sleeping in their beds in their own apartments, this mother and the child. Like, this is what Russia brings to Ukraine. There's no military purpose here. Okay, Russia has launched more than 112,000 Shahed drones at Ukraine since the start of the full scale invasion. That's the scope of what they've been doing, targeting people like this as they sleep in their bed at night. Yes, they're going after the electrical grid. I understand that. Okay, there's time of war. Yes, they're doing this to try to hurt civilians, but they're also right now they have a more military angle at this, trying to turn out the lights for military purposes. And I understand that, but this is a war crime, right? I mean, it just clearly is. Russians regularly use them for T attacks on civilian infrastructure, including energy facilities and apartment buildings, often launching them in swarms to overwhelm air defenses and cause maximum damages. And this is what one Shahed drone looks like. And they're improving them. And I hate to say improving because it's making it worse, right? They're improving them with greater kilograms in the warheads, a greater ability to fly higher, farther, faster, that sort of thing. Okay, Russia struck the Azerbaijani embassy in Kyiv. Okay, with Iskander missile during a nighttime bombardment. Moscow called it an accident. Now, either you got to choose. Either you really can pinpoint strike, or you you meant to do it, or you're really just not that good. Moscow called it an accident. Baku, that's the capital of Azerbaijan, saw it as a deliberate retaliation. Azerbaijan has quietly become one of Russia's most disruptive rivals. Azerbaijanis also broke away from, they used to be under, the whole region used to be like Gazprom dominated. Azerbaijan also broke Gazprom's pipeline monopoly. The Zangur corridor linking Azerbaijan through Armenia. This was part of that peace deal that the Trump administration helped broker between Azerbaijan and Armenia to Turkey, is reshaping trade routes between Europe and Asia without crossing Russian territory, which is new. Azerbaijan has become the smallest state to inflict deep strategic damage on Russia, replacing Moscow's role in Ukraine's defense, Europe's energy grid, the Caucasus transit networks. An embassy strike exposes Russia's lashing out as influence crumbles in its own neighborhood. So this was an important message that the Russians were sending to Azerbaijan. Okay, let's look at the battlefield. 1,170 Russians off the battlefield, 4 tanks, 9 artillery systems. Let's look at the vehicles and fuel, 74 vehicles and fuel tanks. So the battlefield's still hot. It's north of the average, which is about 1,000 a day, 1,170. Engagements remain high, casualties well above the 7-day average. Land-based equipment losses are well above average, drone losses below it. Across direction, 62 assaults. It was as high as north of 100 something, like 120 or something at its peak. Покrovsk is still the key. This is what the Russians want. The Russians want Покrovsk. Ukrainians want Russians to come into Покrovsk so they can have the fight there. They all want to have it out right there. Okay. Huliopol direction, Zaporizhia region. You've probably heard, horror stories of, they're gaining ground in Huliopol. 9 times there was attacks there. So 9 as opposed to 62 is not a lot, but things are changing there. Let me show you this. I saw Denis Davidov talking about this, and I thought, this is really interesting context to provide as well. Listen to this. Just 1 minute of him describing this. It'll reshape the way that you're thinking about what the Russians can or can't do moving forward.
Finally, frontline updates. Yeah, Russia is getting close to the Ukrainian defense line in Zaporizhia region, but they have
This is around Huliopol.
substantial losses on the way. Russia is using the new tactics, which they successfully implemented in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, but here Russia has way more losses, mainly because of the 2 reasons. The terrain here is very flat, and also there are no leaves on the trees any longer. So those...
If you didn't catch that, he said there are no leaves on the trees any longer, so there's no place to hide.
3 lines between the fields, they're not working as they used to before to hide Russian infantry. Russians are pretty much visible, and at the same time they have natural obstacles, so they stack at some points. The only way for them to hide is just in ruined buildings or basements of the settlements. And for this reason you see the...
So you see these lines coming out. These are like the place within the town where they would be able to hide, but they can't really hide along the field. So it's going to be very difficult for them to make further progress when the leaves are off the trees and they're visible by drones.
Those big advancements, they have to go from one village to another with small, very small groups of the soldiers, 1, 2 soldiers, not more. They usually do it under the cover of fog, and here they try to offense with more forces, but after all they were kaputted. So Russians went there to Oleksiivka village. The Ukrainian surveillance drones used the thermal cameras, and later on there was artillery fire. Also very precise drone fire.
Yeah, they can do it under the cover of fog because the drones can't really see. They can't really do it at night because the drones can see them. So that's part of the context shaping the battlefield on the front. Ukrainian forces have also entered the settlement of Stepove, but of course they're going to run into the same problems that the Russians are running into as they're trying to advance. Okay. You got to be careful about who you see when you see stuff on social media. This guy posted, the Russian army has liberated the city of Kupyansk in the Kharkiv region. No, well, so Putin said this yesterday. Greg Terry and I talked about this in the video. In Kyiv, if Kyiv refuses to discuss Trump's plan, then together with its European war, but by the way, this is the official Ministry of Russia ex post. Like, so be careful of who you just like. Anybody can post anything. This is official from the MFA of Russia. If Kyiv refuses to discuss Donald Trump's plan, then together with its European war instigators must understand that the fall of Kupyansk will inevitably be repeated. This is saying that it has fallen and other key sectors on the front. Overall, the situation is acceptable to us. Okay, so they're claiming that Kupyansk has been already captured. Does that look captured to you? Because this is... this is the map, or does that look even surrounded? Like, this is the area that's still contested, or still in Ukrainian control. Yes, are the Russians in Kupyansk? Certainly. Has it fallen? No. They said it. Gerasimov said it a month ago, and it's still not gone. And they're repeating it as if that makes it true. This is a cockpit view from a Ukrainian Mi-24 Hind helicopter gunship commuting down a highway. They do this really low on the highway so they're not picked up by radar. It's kind of dangerous to be this low, but this is one of the way they get out of radar view. This is a gunship shooting down a Shahed drone. Just now, they have to be careful about what they're shooting and what's going to be on the other side. But yeah, that was just a drone. Okay, it's not, nobody's killed here. This is just a drone, but that's what the Ukrainians have to do. Thanks to United 24 for that video, by the way. Euromaidan Press. Meet Russia's Dandelion tank. This is the latest technological advance. Answer to Ukrainian FPV drones. It has branching metal florets that trigger drones before they hit the hole. Think of it as a tree made of fiberglass rods with Kevlar mesh that eats up to 6 to 8 drones. The passive protection device consists of sets of rods made of flexible material, interconnected in tree-like structures, the patent says. No Dandelion tanks are on the front line. I haven't spotted one yet, but this is what they say is going to show up soon. It can be defeated. It just takes extra drones in order to get there, but that's what they're going to have to do. They don't have the kind of technology that will, figure out where the drones are and then shoot it down with a Gatling kind of device that shoots, massive amounts of bullets. Okay. I saw this and I just, for context, want to say, like, this happens regularly. Russians again execute Ukrainian POWs, Russian war crimes. Russians execute 5 Ukrainian prisoners of war. I blurred this out so that you cannot see the bodies here lying on the ground. But this happens again and again. I do not want to see this kind of thing. I wish I could wash out my eyes after having seen this. It's just terrible. But the Russians keep doing this, and we act like, hey, let's have these peace negotiations without addressing this kind of thing. This is what's all in the news today. So there's less about the battlefield and about overnight attacks because this is the prominent story. And so it allowed me to have this context discussion. But how are we talking about the peace plan points without addressing this first? Before anything else, these war crimes need to stop. Okay, and the critical reality is on the ground, this is 2023 and this is 2025. Barely any difference between after the rollback, the counteroffensive, and today. I mean, there's not a lot of ground that's changed. Jason J. Smart posted this: Russia's demand for the rest of Donbass is irrational. The math simply doesn't work. Since late 2022, Moscow has traded roughly 170 to 180 casualties for every square kilometer gained. 170 to 180 casualties for every square kilometer. To capture the remaining 8,400 kilometers will require Russia to exert another 1.3 to 1.5 million additional casualties. And this peace plan, if you can call it that, is really just giving away what would cost Russia 1.5 million casualties. It's nuts. Okay, before I get to this last little thing, a shout out to Thomas Camp, board member, Patreon board member. I thank you so much for your support, Thomas. Okay, here's the last thing. It's a Holodomor commemoration day. Today is November 22nd. On November 22nd, 2025, Ukraine observes Holodomor Commemoration Day, honoring the millions who perished during the 1932 to 1933 famine deliberately created by, well, Russia. I mean, let's be honest, Russia was the driving force of the Soviet Union that essentially held Ukraine within the Soviet Union against their will. They didn't want to be there. Death solves all problems. No human, no problem, said Joseph Stalin. So the Holodomor targeted Ukraine's population and its national identity through state-imposed starvation. Yeah, they tried to create this collective farming, taking people off their farms, putting them in collective farms where Ukraine was trying to push back against that, and so they starved them out. At the height of the Holodomor, an estimated 28,000 people died every day. That's 17 every minute, 1,000 every hour. Overall death toll in Ukraine between 3 and 7 million, excluding Ukrainians outside the Ukrainian SSR who also starved. This is why Ukrainians don't appreciate Russia. You always see Maria Zakharova and others saying, well, they just don't appreciate what we did for them. You starved them. You killed them. This is why they were fighting you as well as the Nazis in World War II. This is why. Despite holding substantial grain reserves and continuing to export agricultural products, Soviet authorities denied the famine, rejected international aid, punished starving people, including with execution, for gathering leftover grains in the field. They starved Ukrainians, and you wonder why Ukraine resents you. All right, that's where we are. I'm going to stop and let my blood pressure go down. Thank you, my friends, for your time. I hope the context here helps you see the future and see what's going to happen on the battlefield or with oil refineries or whatever. If it was useful, please put that in the comments below. Help me understand what I can do to do more that will help you understand context. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.